Now, we try to put this ordinance together. We need an ordinance here, and it's supposed to benefit everybody, not any one particular individual or group of people. It doesn't matter where you live, how you conduct your life. This ordinance is for all persons in Maple Valley Township, not just the ones who scream the loudest and make false accusations about people here on this commission. That's pretty much what I have to say. And as far as going through this whole operation that we've had to go through here, again, I think that everyone on this, whether they have an agenda or not, everyone on this commission has done their level best to do the research and find those particulars about the industry of making energy from wind. I thank you for your time.
Anybody else got anything to say? Any deliberation?
Yeah, let's. And do you have questions right now too?
No.
So, yeah, I think that was mostly the only direction I have. So one thing we said, most of the public comment during the public hearing was in the form of statements, but there were a few questions that we would like to answer. And the first one was, from the lakes, which lakes are, as drafted, the mile setback? Page 8, yes, thank you. So the lakes that a mile would apply from the back property line, as it's written, is, are you gonna have that? Muskellunge, Cowden, Cody, Rocky, Bernard, Picnic, Black, Cranberry, Spruce, Mahaney, Ward, Mosquito, and Winfield Lakes. So those are the lakes that are named.
But there also is a waiver in there stating that if you own property around one of those lakes all the way around, or if all the lake owners around there would like to sign a waiver and would like them placed closer, you have that option. So there is an option for it to be closer to any of your lakes that you would like.
The second question that was mentioned was, could you put some sort of avian study requirement or avian detection requirement in the wind ordinance? And the answer to that is yes. I will say in the current ordinance on page 7, it talks about if U.S. Fish and Wildlife requires an incidental eagle take permit, that would have to be submitted to the township to verify essentially compliance with federal law. And then on the very last page, going to page 12, the township can request an environmental assessment or impact study which relates to eagles, birds, and other avian wildlife. So those are the two provisions that do that. I know I have seen other ordinances that talk about avian detection equipment, and you can always do that. I will say that, you know, that's always an option, but you do have stuff in here right now too, as well.
So it would be similar to a lighting system then? Avian detection system?
I think so. In reality, I don't know how many turbines that actually have a system like that. So in my experience, when a community wants to have turbines, and they do have turbines, the process typically works. The project process is they will consult with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and MDNR. And generally, those two agencies will come up with a number of recommendations or requirements. And if you look at like page 6 on your ordinance, requires state and federal law compliance, and they will list a number of things. So, you know, for example, one community that we represent, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recommended, which the township adopted, a feathering system for the turbines while it's moving to prevent takes of bats and other avian wildlife. So they'll come up with a number of different sighting parameters, and there's actually federal sighting guidelines. They're not binding law, but typically a developer or a legitimate developer will follow those.
And then that just means that once those recommendations are made, they can adopt whichever.
They could, yeah, so.
They're just
and
recommendations, they can adopt.
they're recommendations, but what I would say is, this is someone made the comment, and it was a very good comment, that this ordinance is designed for the land use in general. It's not designed for a particular project. And I think, especially in this area, we've lost track of that a little bit. So let's say you have an ordinance that would provide for the land use, and there are some aspects of, I'm not going to say if turbines are good or bad, and I think that's what this has turned into a little bit, and with some regulations that have made, some provisions that are in an ordinance, likely, well, including this one, would likely prohibit essentially prohibit anybody from building a turbine. But the reason that you typically do it project by project is you would consider, let's say someone applies for a project and they say, I'm not going to do any of the guidelines that U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is recommending. Then you would presumably deny the project. But let's say someone has turbines in an appropriate location that the community deems appropriate, and they will do that, then you could approve the project. So there's various other factors outside of the wind ordinance. The township zoning ordinance is a very long document that apply to any special land use. And this applies to another person's question about, can we consider land values, or can we put something about land values, a land value guarantee? So when you look at the special, I don't have your full zoning ordinance in front of me, but when you look at the special land use section, there are a variety of discretionary factors that relate to, is this land use compatible with other land uses? And they're very broad statements. And that's where you take into consideration those types of thoughts. And you can really go either way on them. And it's based on, what essentially the planning commission and the township board, or the public, especially with the opportunity of the referendum, determines is appropriate or is not appropriate. So that's where you address items like that. And it's important to not look at an ordinance in isolation, and then it's generally, not, communities do it all the time. In an ideal world of planning and zoning, typically you would design an ordinance that would allow the land use where it is appropriate, and you would not draft a land use to be totally excluded in a jurisdiction. With that being said, there are ordinances, and there have been challenges to ordinances that are restrictive under exclusionary zoning, and a developer has a pretty high burden of showing that there's a demonstrated need for the land use, and in many of those cases, or I think it might be all of them, the Court of Appeals, the developer has lost. But that's not to say if you make an ordinance that is very restrictive that there is not a litigation risk, but there is, that's just something for you guys to think of, not necessarily, of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. Ben, I'm happy. I think those were all the questions. I'm happy if you have a specific question about the ordinance. Otherwise, I think you can deliberate it.
I wanted to add to the aviation detection system. Is my understanding, and I have not checked back in several months, I admit, but is my understanding that Apex does have it where they will be putting on an aviation detection system, as well as for lighting systems.
Put in the ordinance right now.
It's in there, but I'm trying to tell you that it also is being, I think they are required to, yes.
They're not required by law?
They're not? Okay, well, we can still make sure it gets in there.
So you can make sure they're required.
Any questions? Any deliberation?
I just got a question. With the 45 LMAX, does that make it exclusive?
So the 45 LMAX will likely make I have not seen a turbine built in a community that adopts an LMAX standard. And it is typically used to make it so you will not have turbines in your township. That's why you'll see many communities that do not want turbines. They will use the LMAX standard I think if you talk to most experts, I'm not going to say all experts, and this is a battle with an expert, I'm a lawyer, I'm not an audio engineer, whatever, they will say LMAX is inappropriate for turbines because it's designed for an instantaneous sound, like a gunshot. Most of the papers, I'm not going to say all the papers, typically say to use LEQ.
This is a biased attorney.
And
Tyler.
Quiet. 10 to 15 minutes. That's what I've seen, and that's what I've seen from most of, including, and this is a good question from the back, including when we represent municipalities that hire sound experts that have a duty and oath to the township or to the county, and that's what they tell us. So that's what I am reiterating from them. So it's up to you to make that choice of whether you think that's appropriate or not appropriate. I just, I think I have a duty to tell you the reality of, okay, if you're going to put a provision in, this is what happens. I'm not going to tell you, is it bad that it excludes all turbines? I don't know. It's up to it's up to all of you to determine if that's bad or good. And then the other thing is, many people will bring up the Almer Township case, and they will read it, and the first thing is, it would be persuasive authority in this area, but it is an Eastern District of Michigan court case, not a Western District case. And then what it analyzes is the text of an ordinance. It analyzes the particular text of, or it would have been Almer Township's ordinance that had certain language, and the reasonable interpretation of that language was LMAX. It didn't determine whether it is
That's all he's doing.
Not say that it is a reasonable or unreasonable standard. That is a decision for all of you to make.
What about all the townships sued over abuse of sound? Over the justice.
My attorney not.
Get back on track here.
Use the microphone, Raj. Half of us can't hear you.
We're trying to get understanding of all this. We're not listening to just one person. 2 years. The lawyer was brought in to explain some of the legalities to us, so that's why he's here. I'm sorry you don't approve of his legalities, but that's what we're going off of. So, he knows the law, that's why he's here. Thank you. You've been practicing for a year. Waste of money.
And on top of that, y'all complain because we're paying a lawyer, and now you're wasting his time, so we're paying him to listen to our complaints.
Come back with an AR.
You can make that anytime you want. That's something that's for your
All right.
Well, I'd like to make a motion then.
What is it?
I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and send the ordinance as it stands to the PC at the county for them to review and for them to send on their findings to the township board and let them figure it out. That is my motion.
Is there anybody that'll second that? I'll second that motion. Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to
Can I amend that, by make sure we put this aviation detection in there?
Okay, you'd like to add the aviation detection system?
Avion. In there,
and that's back there by the Eagle's Nest.
Avion, yes. Look at Lee, he's like, I'm sorry.
Good catch, Lee.
He's like, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine.
Where do we wanna add that? And on page 6, if you flip the page, it becomes 5. Is where it's highlighted. As part of the wetlands and to complete the U.S. Wild or Fish and Wildlife ETP incidental
Okay.
eagle pig permit for bald eagles and protection, and then you want to add the aviation detection.
Avion, yep, A-V-I-O-N.
See that wind turbine?
Okay.
Okay,
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded.
You're adding it.
Hold on just a second, Roger, we're talking about whether we should add it, to section 3, visual appearance, lighting, and power lines. Under that section, make it an E in that section. So it's with the lighting and the ADLS system.
Oh, yeah.
In the organization of this. That's what we were just discussing, is where it would make the most sense to put it in the ordinance itself.
I thought maybe that would go
And
under that state, local, and federal rules and
I
regulations.
thought for organizational purposes, it may,
So if you're going to add a requirement, like a performance standard requirement, I would recommend that you, because that section above, Roger, is designed for permits that you need, and the section below it is designed for equipment,
my dealer.
And what I think you could put E and say a wind energy facility must be equipped with an avian detection system. I will say I don't know if that's something that turbines actually use. So that's the only thing I would be hesitant about it. And you could always make something like that a condition of being cut check. So you make an ordinance requirement. That's not
Okay.
We better make that so.
I also like the idea of putting it in a separate place in an ordinance so that it's in two places, so there's no mistaking that this avian detection system is in there and that's what we want, so.
All right, so we've amended my motion to add it under 3, visual appearance, lighting, and power lines, make it letter E, and the avian detection system be part of that portion there.
What should be added in there for the commercial use? Commercial use, then does it fall back on the wet too?
No,
Then it was just stated.
we took that out, that doesn't apply to this. The portion we're working on right now only applies to the industrial wind.
Okay.
Because the single use for your home is still under section 306, accessory uses and structures.
Okay, so you've got
We need to put that under Roger, or what, on what
page 7,
Okay.
and that would be underneath D, just before 4.
Okay. I got it then.
So it's been moved and seconded to accept the ordinance as it stands with the correction, or with the amendment of E, wind energy facilities, have the avian detection systems installed. Everybody in favor of accepting this to send on to the board?
I would do a roll call vote.
Yep.
Okay?
Okay, I'll start out. Lee?
Yeah.
Dubkowski?
Yes.
Becker?
No.
Peterson?
Yes.
Knapp, yes. Delaney?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion passes.
I would like to refer to the noise from item 7 on page 9.
We've already voted.
We just voted to move it. Send it to county.
And if they don't have it available, then they can't put it on, so you can't put it, or what, put up a turbine.
I would like to make a motion to reconsider sending it to the county as a,
The township board, you mean?
the town.
Go
No,
ahead,
it goes to the county.
That was my motion, is to send it to the county PC, then to be sent on.
Even if you take your vote back, it's still.
I think there's a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
second for reconsideration? Reconsidering.
I think, one of the commissioners was confused with.
Ann was confused on what she was voting on. She thought it was on this aviation detection. I don't hear any seconds. Well, our next meeting is.
What about this, seminar stuff? We were gonna discuss that.
Yes.
I sent an email to her, I don't know, I didn't hear back, I don't know if they're supposed to do it as a group or not. It said limited, so.
I seen it, I didn't have a lot of time to look at it.
I wasn't sure either, so it said limited thing, so I got mine in. I don't know if we were supposed to do it as a group
Looks
or
like
what.
a good thing that maybe all of us should do anyway.
Yeah.
I already sent an email in registering me, cause I found it as well, so.
So we don't have to do it as a group, because that was my understanding in the email.
I didn't see that, so.
I would like to go anyway, get more information is better.
Yep.
Right.
So if you want, I can send a group email, or you guys can send your own individually. You can just let me know, it doesn't matter.
Did you have like an application there or anything?
Nope, just had to let them know. So they know. So if you, the email was on the screenshot that I sent to everybody.
And it's 22 weeks from today.
Yeah, 2 weeks from today.
Working towards that.
Community college.
MCC.
I'm CEO.
Yeah, it's W210 in the Les Morford building at the college.
What is our next date for our meeting?
May 5th.
May 5th?
May 5th is our next meeting.
May 5th is the next scheduled meeting for the planning commission.
I think so. They haven't posted yet.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank